Battle of Mogadishu, 1993. Mogadishu, a city in chaos. October 1993. The city of Mogadishu, Somalia, was a place caught between chaos and survival. For years, the African nation had been torn apart by civil war, and the capital city had become the epicenter of violence. Streets that once bustled with market activity were now deserted or filled with fear and uncertainty. Warlords ruled with an iron fist, and one name struck fear into every corner of the city: Mohamed Farrah Aidid. He was a powerful warlord whose militias controlled Mogadishu and waged relentless campaigns against anyone who opposed him too. Humanitarian crisis and US intervention. In response to the growing humanitarian crisis, the United Nations had deployed peacekeeping forces, but the efforts were often hindered by the lawless environment and the constant threat from Aidid's militias. The US, concerned with both the safety of humanitarian operations and the increasing instability, decided to take direct action. Special operations forces, including the elite Delta Force and Army Rangers, were tasked with capturing Aidid's top lieutenants. The mission was precise, daring, and extremely dangerous. 3. The mission plan. The plan was straightforward on paper. Insert American forces into the heart of Mogadishu using helicopters. Capture key figures and extract before enemy forces could react. However, the reality of urban warfare in Mogadishu would prove far more complicated. Intelligence suggested that Aidid's forces, though poorly equipped compared to the US military, were numerous, highly motivated, and intimately familiar with the city's labyrinthine streets. On the morning of October 3, 1993, the skies above Mogadishu were clear. The Americans prepared to execute what was supposed to be a swift and precise raid. Black Hawk helicopters lifted off from secure positions, carrying soldiers ready for combat. Below, the city remained tense, its residents unsure of what the day would bring. The first helicopters touched down smoothly, and soldiers disembarked, moving with military precision through the streets. 4. Initial success and emerging threats. The operation began successfully. American forces quickly reached their initial target locations. They moved with urgency, aware that every second counted. But as they secured the compounds, the local militias started to react. Sniper fire erupted from rooftops, and hidden gunmen opened fire from alleys. The urban environment, full of narrow streets and tall buildings, turned into a deadly trap. The Americans found themselves under fire from multiple directions simultaneously. In those first moments, it became clear that the mission would be far more dangerous than anticipated. The militias were not simply reacting. They were coordinating, setting ambushes, and using the city itself as a weapon. Every corner could hide a threat. Every window a sniper's position. Point 5. Downed Black Hawks in chaos. Then came the unthinkable. One of the Black Hawk helicopters was struck by rocket-propelled grenades and crashed into the street below. Within minutes, a second helicopter was also downed. The mission transformed from a capture operation into a desperate fight for survival. Soldiers were trapped in hostile territory, with no immediate way to evacuate. Chaos reigned on the streets. The sound of gunfire, explosions, and cries of wounded soldiers filled the air. Yet, despite the overwhelming danger, the American forces regrouped, establishing defensive perimeters around the crash sites. Their training kicked in. They moved systematically to protect their comrades, pull the wounded to safety, and prepare for extraction. 6. Fighting for survival. What followed was a battle that would last more than 15 hours. unlike any urban combat most Americans had experienced. Soldiers moved from street to street, exchanging fire with militias hidden in every building. They were outnumbered, but they fought with courage, discipline, and determination. The streets of Mogadishu became a battleground where every meter gained came at a heavy cost. By the end of the first day, it was evident that the mission had spiraled out of control. The original objective, capturing key lieutenants, was overshadowed by the urgent need to survive, recover downed crew members, and evacuate safely. The American forces had entered the city with precision and planning, but Mogadishu had turned into a maze of danger, testing their limits in ways no one had anticipated. Nightfall and reinforcements. As night fell, the battle did not end. Reinforcements struggled to reach the trapped soldiers, and every attempt to secure the area was met with resistance. Civilians, caught between fear and chaos, fled their homes, while militias exploited the darkness to mount relentless attacks. The city had become an arena where the might of the US military clashed with the cunning and desperation of local fighters. The mission shifts from capture to survival. The morning of October 3rd had begun with precision and planning, but by midday, the mission had transformed into a desperate struggle for survival. The downed Black Hawk helicopters became the focal points of the battlefield. American soldiers, once on a controlled mission to capture key lieutenants of Mohamed Farrah Aidid, now found themselves trapped in hostile streets, surrounded by enemy militias armed with rifles, rocket-propelled grenades, and improvised weapons. The commanders quickly realized the stakes had changed. The new priority was to rescue the crews of the downed helicopters and evacuate all personnel before more lives were lost. Reinforcements were called in, including additional rangers, Delta operators, and armored personnel carriers. Yet, the urban terrain of Mogadishu presented challenges that no map or satellite image could fully reveal. Narrow alleys, collapsed buildings, and densely packed streets made every movement dangerous. Point 2. Establishing defensive perimeters immediately after the helicopters went down. US soldiers organized defensive perimeters around the crash sites. They dug into positions behind vehicles, barricades, and debris. Each squad worked to cover multiple angles, scanning windows and rooftops for potential sniper fire. Every street became a kill zone, every building a potential trap. Despite the chaos, American forces maintained discipline. Medical teams began treating the wounded under fire, moving them to relative safety while suppressing enemy advances. Communication was vital. Radios crackled with urgent messages as commanders coordinated movements, planned extraction routes, and requested air support. 3. The streets turned into a battlefield. The militias had been waiting for such an opportunity. They converged on the American positions, using their knowledge of the city to their advantage. Every corner presented an ambush. The US soldiers faced sniper fire from rooftops, gunfire from windows, and RPG attacks from alleyways. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, adding moral and operational complexity to the battle. The streets of Mogadishu became a maze of chaos, with soldiers forced to fight block by block, street by street. Armored vehicles attempted to clear paths, but were also targeted by anti-armor weapons. The militias, though less equipped, moved quickly, blending into crowds, disappearing behind buildings, and striking with deadly precision. Point 4. Rescue operations under fire. 1 of the most critical moments came when teams were assigned to recover the crew of the first downed Black Hawk. Soldiers moved through streets filled with rubble, gunfire echoing from every direction. Every step was dangerous. Every rooftop could hide a sniper ready to take aim. Despite the odds, the American forces pushed forward. Soldiers displayed extraordinary courage, dragging wounded comrades to safety while returning fire. The rescue operations were meticulously coordinated, yet the unpredictability of urban combat made every action a test of nerves and skill. The second helicopter crash added another layer of complexity. The soldiers now had two sites to defend and secure, both under continuous attack. Reinforcements struggled to reach the locations due to blocked streets and militia control of key intersections. Each maneuver required a calculated risk, balancing speed, protection, and tactical advantage. 5. Heroism amid chaos throughout the battle. Acts of individual heroism became legendary. Soldiers ran through open streets to pull their wounded comrades into relative safety, exposing themselves to enemy fire. Medics administered care under the most extreme conditions, refusing to abandon those in need. Communication officers maintained contact with command despite the chaos, relaying positions, requests for artillery support, and casualty reports. Even amid this dire situation, the US forces never lost cohesion. Small units formed defensive pockets, supporting one another, covering exits, and coordinating suppressive fire. Every action was a fight for survival. Every decision could mean life or death. 6. The cost of urban warfare. As the hours passed, the toll became evident. Casualties mounted, and the physical exhaustion of constant combat weighed heavily on soldiers. The urban terrain amplified every danger. No street was safe, no alley unmarked. Even with superior training and firepower, the American forces found themselves in a battle of endurance and resilience rather than conventional tactics. The militias, although outgunned, used their environment to devastating effect. The Americans were forced to adapt on the fly, improvising strategies and adjusting to the constantly changing battlefield. Helicopter support could not always reach the streets where soldiers were pinned down, and airstrikes had to be precise to avoid civilian casualties. Nightfall intensifies the battle. As night approached, the intensity of the battle did not wane. Darkness provided both cover and danger. US forces used night vision and infrared equipment to monitor enemy movements. But militias exploited shadows, blind corners, and the confusion of urban terrain. Every street patrol was a high-risk operation. Soldiers relied on teamwork and training to maintain perimeters, evacuate wounded, and protect the downed crews. The city became a chessboard of survival, where every move had to be calculated, and hesitation could be fatal. Civilians continued to flee, adding complexity to maneuvering forces and forcing commanders to make split-second ethical and tactical decisions. 8. The struggle to reach extraction points. By late night, the focus shifted to linking up with armored reinforcements and securing evacuation routes. Convoys moved cautiously, clearing streets, covering intersections, and responding to ambushes. Soldiers on foot scouted ahead, marking dangerous areas, while those in vehicles provided covering fire. The rescue operations became a battle of coordination as much as combat. Every movement was a negotiation between survival, mission objectives, and the unpredictable nature of urban warfare. Despite the chaos, the US forces managed to maintain communication and cohesion, enabling them to protect their comrades and continue the fight. Every meter gained was a small victory against overwhelming odds. 9. Preparing for extraction. By the end of Part 2, the Americans had secured both helicopter crash sites, but had paid a heavy price. Wounded soldiers were numerous, ammunition was running low, and the city remained hostile. Commanders knew that the next phase extraction would be just as dangerous as the firefights that had already unfolded. The battle had shown both the bravery and vulnerability of US forces in urban warfare. Soldiers had fought heroically, using skill, training, and courage to survive in an environment that constantly turned against them. Yet, the mission had morphed from a tactical operation into a desperate struggle for survival, laying the foundation for the dramatic events that would follow in the coming hours.